And if you can open that link and share your screen, and we'll go ahead and go through this process, and I'll talk a little bit about it. What we're trying to do is create service accounts or bot accounts, and I'd like to get your opinion on the process itself, and then any sort of security concerns that you think might be exposed here or need to be addressed.
Mhm.
So first, the idea is that this screen would exist at every level. So at the group level and at the projects and instance, because you want to be able to create a service account at the level you want access to with inheritance all the way to items underneath it.
Mhm.
So from here, go ahead and create the service account button and click on the name and the avatar and the access role. And just pick one, doesn't matter. And so now if you select one of the three tokens there, can you just give me some feedback on when you click on them? Do you think there could be any change, or if there's a concern here if we create it in this manner?
So quick comment here. So I think expiration, even if I don't choose anything here, I think we have to enforce like a default expiration time, I think. So that's
Okay.
common. That's a common thing that I'm noticing for all kinds of tokens. We don't enforce any expiration. So what happens is that someone creates some high privilege token and say they leave the company, or they move to a different project or something. They might still end up having very high privileged access. And currently we have a issue of auditability also for admins. So they don't have like a one place to see what are all the tokens that were created by whom and all that thing. So if you're, yeah, since this is a new feature that we're working on, it'll be nice to enforce a default expiration. I mean, folks can set it as based on their requirements, but I think we have to enforce one by default.
Okay, so that's really important. I wanted to get some feedback on that because right now, currently, that field is optional. And
Yeah.
you say it would make sense to have an enforcement date. Would there be a reason or a need to have an indefinite expiration, or
No,
is that kind of just
I
like a luxury that we shouldn't be doing?
yeah, I again, I don't know how deploy tokens are used. I mean, deploy tokens, I mean, used for deployment, right? I think even those you can have them, I guess, valid for a long time. But again, there for tokens that tend to live longer, it's good to have a rotation policy in place. So if say deploy tokens, since I'm assuming you use these to deploy stuff, if it's not good if they expire too often, so it'll be an inconvenience. So for tokens like these, it'll be nice to automatically rotate them, say once in a year or once every 6 months.
Okay.
But access token, I think it should be as short as possible, like 1 hour. Usually is the industry standard. SEIM token, I am not sure what it's used for. So yeah, I guess depending on the context, we should either enforce like a as short as possible expiration time. If it's something like deploy token, expiration wouldn't make sense, but rotation, I guess, rotating it periodically makes sense automatically. So I guess I'm not relying on the admins to do it. Again, that'll be at least if we can enforce the rotation automatically, that'll be ideal. If we can't enforce it automatically, at least alerting the admins that this token has been created more than a year ago. You might want to rotate it as a security best practice.
Yeah, that's interesting. So an automatic rotation makes sense to me. We don't necessarily have some sort of system in place to do that, but it doesn't mean we can't create one.
Yeah.
If you were to create some sort of rotation, so say, for example, you select a deploy token, it says deploy token will be rotated automatically in 6 months or a year or whatever.
Hmm.
Would there be, you said we'd have to have a notification system. If there was an automatic method of doing it that automatically generated the token,
Hmm.
I would wonder if there'd be a security problem where the notification came into place saying you've now created this new token, please view it here someplace, versus having just a notice by saying, hey, it's time to replace a token, it's been 6 months or whatever, and then have the admin be notified and go manually create the process.
Yeah, I mean, with the automatic rotation, I think I think the good thing with the automatic rotation is it's transparent and seamless. I guess it's seamless, not transparent, seamless with respect to an admin. But if the admin actually needs to know what the deploy token is, I don't think we. So say I'm creating a token now, I get to see the token only when I create it, and once that is done, I'm not able to. I won't be able to see the deploy token, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so if I guess yeah, it depends on the requirement. Like if the admin does need to know what the deploy token is, then I guess the automatic rotation, um, yeah, might not make sense because they won't know what the new token is, right? So in
Yeah.
that case, I guess we have to alert the admin, and there could be the potential of like downtime. Like we might have to support the old token and the new token for there should be some overlap time
Hmm.
until the old token is also valid and the new token is also valid. But once that overlap time is done, then the new token takes over, and implementation was, I think we have to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Also.
If you were to click on the deploy token and then just pick any of the scope and then
Mhm.
generate token, this is kind of what I had in mind, where it would say you have to copy it. We currently have this process,
Mhm.
and this is something that I don't know if it's the best solution or not, but since it's what we currently use, I thought, okay, we'll just use that for now and see if there's a
Mhm.
better way of doing that. So this kind of brings into the discussion what you're just speaking of, how you
Yeah.
would repopulate it or regenerate that code.
Mhm.
This would be the one, my first thought on how to do it.
Mhm.
I'd be curious to see if there was, I'd wanted to learn more if there's a possibility to automatically regenerate it by
Mhm.
having it. I don't know if having it visible somewhere to get this copy and paste somewhere would be a safety concern versus having to do it automatically, right? Or not
Yeah.
automatically.
I mean, like say once I've generated the deploy token and once I've configured it in my groups or projects, is there really a need for me to know what the deploy token is at that point? Like if my projects are working as intended, and if the rotation is happening seamlessly, if I really need a deploy token, I can always create a new one, right? But to me, I think uh, from the developer's point of view and from the implementation point of view, if you can go the automatic rotation route, it'll be much more cleaner that way instead of pinging the admin and asking them to rotate.
Okay. Um, right now, currently, we have for access token, we don't generate a token, we generate a user.
Mhm.
And then that user is the, I guess, bot. It's not really a bot. It's actually taking a seat. And so this is part of the reason we're trying to change this process.
Mhm.
There's a related issue where we are looking at unifying the tokens. So instead of having a deploy token or an access token, it's just the same token in the database or the
Mhm.
same table, but you can then define the scope and that would differentiate what sort of token it is without having to
Mhm.
pick the type of token. Do you think there would be any sort of security concerns with that?
Yeah, I guess if you're just relying on one token, so I guess all the permissions get uh, uh, populated in that just one token. Like say, once I select the deploy token, the scopes change accordingly, right? And
Right.
once I select the SCIM token, let's say access token, the scopes are different. So yeah, I guess there is a risk of making that one token to rule them all kind of a
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
Uh, so.
And for this, go ahead and click on deploy again
Mhm.
and click on a scope and then generate. And then at the bottom, click that save button. Now, so the idea is that you would have the list of the tokens here
Mhm.
and you would be able to just delete them or create a new one. You wouldn't be able to necessarily change it.
Mhm.
I don't know if there's a necessity for changing or updating the token rather than just creating a new one. That's currently what we have right now is that you can only just delete it. Is there any reason why you want to look at or modify the token here, or does that present security concerns?
I guess so I guess the revocation is one place where, like, say the token gets leaked somewhere. It'll be nice to revoke it.
Yeah.
If you delete it, I'm assuming it goes away from the database, and if someone tries to access the API using that deleted token, it wouldn't go through.
Yeah, the
That's
idea
just
would work the same as the revoke.
revoke. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. Then yeah, if you have the delete option, I guess yeah, that makes sense.
And one thing that Cynthia had mentioned is that it would be interesting to see bots from what objects they filtered down to and where they inherited from. So in this iteration, I only have it where it filters down to or where it came from, and as it exists here. But the ideas she presented was that as an admin, I'd want to see both vertically and laterally, because that way, if there's an instance where I don't know where the bot exists, I don't want to go backtrack and dig around, it would make sense to see it in that way. I think that has value. I'm curious to know what you think. Does that make sense, or is there a problem with that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think we have a whole issue discussing the groups sharing complexity, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think we don't want to add that complexity on top of this feature. So yeah, any approach we take to make it easier for an admin to see, I guess, all the complex, uh, all the access or all the inherited permissions and all that that a bot or a service account would inherit or would give to subsequent projects or groups in in this location. I think that'll be great.
Okay. Okay. And did you have any other feedback?
Yeah, I think this issue I captured a few, right? So service accounts getting
Mhm.
too permissive. So I think we
Yeah.
talked about this. And yeah, I think enforcing least privilege wherever we can. So if we go back to this, I mean, we could have this in the documentation somewhere. Like if someone is choosing all the scopes, maybe we should have an alert saying that, hey, do you really need all those scopes? Try to use least privilege wherever you can. So
Hmm.
we can have that in the documentation, but maybe like if someone's selecting all the scopes for a given token, maybe you can have like an alert saying that, hey, do you know what you're doing and
Yeah,
stuff like
this
that.
is not recommended. It causes
Yeah.
security concern.
Mhm.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and no configuration. Yeah, I think this is more visibility, I think, into the permissions that a token created by a service account and um, I guess ability to add fine-grained access through scopes. So I think we already have scopes here. So there is a way to give more fine-grained access. And also, once the token is generated, if you can show like all the permissions, like say this bot user, this service account, like all the tokens that they created and the access that they have in
Hmm.
this main view, that'll be
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think one other comment I had was looking at this was, let's go back. The token size looks a little smaller. Maybe again, I don't know the entropy of this string, but yeah, if you can make it a little larger, I don't know what the industry standard is, but it's definitely looks the industry standard tokens like say auth0 whenever they issue a token like this. I don't remember the length, but it seems larger than this one. So maybe you wanna be in line with the industry standard on the token size.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think in this case, I just threw some text in there
Oh,
as a
okay, okay,
prototype. Yeah.
cool. Making sure. So I think this is covered, right? Like at every level,
Yeah.
admins can see. Should not be. And yeah, I think this is the second point here is related to like a very common vulnerability that we see. with respect to access is insecure direct object reference kind of issues,
Mhm.
where so say like a token, we console.
Access token was the other one that had.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
you
So
mean?
say
Mhm.
yeah. So say this is group one, and say security bot service account created a service a token associated with group one, and group one would usually have like an ID in the backend, right? So say group one has an ID one in the backend. So the vulnerability that we see is using the access token that's tied to group one, which has a ID one in the backend. What I can do is I can use that token to then change settings in group two, which might have an ID two. But this service account may not have direct access to that group. But what we are checking is like in the backend code usually is the access token valid? If it's valid, we are not checking if the access token is valid on the group that it is trying to access. So more like dynamic, runtime checks, making sure that check to see if the access token is valid, but check to also see if the access token is valid on the group that the token is trying to access. So it's a common issue I think we are saying. So something to keep in mind, so that this cross group, cross project access is not present.
Is that something that currently exists? Because I'm saying, or I'm looking at the settings that we currently have. If you go back and look at the scopes, should those scopes be reduced, or is there something that we're not showing here?
So I think it's not a scope issue. So whenever there's it's more like a backend code that needs to check, where usually they check the validity of the token, and the next step should be this token is trying to access group two, but based on my information that I have, this token belongs to group one. So they shouldn't be able to access group two. But that check, the second check, where you're comparing where this token was issued versus what this token is trying to access, even if it has the right scopes and everything, that check needs to be present.
Mm-hmm.
So that say this token might have, say, this access token might have API access to group one, like it can read, write, delete everything in group one, but that doesn't mean that it should be able to read, write, delete everything on group two, because the token was issued on group one. So that runtime check and the backend is very inconsistent. Like is a common issue that we see in IOC through HackerOne. So this broader class of issues is called like insecure direct object reference vulnerability. So something to keep in mind.
So this would be a separate issue for the backend team to address as part of this process as we move forward.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and wherever we're creating new accounts or new tokens, backend also needs to keep that in mind, saying that if I'm getting a token from somewhere, I have to check the validity, of course, check the expiration, and also if the token is valid to do what it is trying to do. So that's also the important part.
Okay,
that's so very important. I guess a good analogy would be you go check into a hotel, they give you a key card. So the key card should only give you access to your room. Mm-hmm. So, but what's happening right now is I'm able to access any room in the hotel, because what the hotel's the key card reader is doing is it is checking to see if the key card is valid, but not checking to see if the key card is valid to get into this room or that room. So that's okay. And insecure storage of service account token. So I guess on the back end, because we're just showing this token once, and we're not showing this token at all in the front end, right? So in the back end, we have to make sure this is using secure, encryption algorithms and such, and yeah, encrypting the token at rest. No. Lack of visibility created level. I think we've covered this.
Yeah, that'd be the overview screen.
Service accounts, generating tokens that don't expire. Yeah, I think we've covered this also.
Mhm.
Enforcing expiration and rotation policy. And yeah, I think the last one is more like a additional reference for us to look at how GCP has implemented this feature.
Mhm.
And they have written this nice threat model on all the, I guess, the best practices that you have to follow when generating service accounts. So I think they talk about, privilege escalation, not following least privilege, and spoofing. Yeah, I think
Mhm.
stuff we discussed, but maybe if you can go into specifics on uh, something that maybe like while you're implementing, if you can use this as a reference to, not do stuff like this, I think that'll be
Yeah.
also, yeah.
And
So very
then,
comprehensive. Yeah.
yeah, on this issue, the service request or the review of service account issue that you created. Okay, cool. I was double checking that I had it assigned to me so I can keep it in my records.
Mhm.
Cool. Thanks. Anything else?
That's it for now. I'll take a closer look again at this prototype, and maybe if
Mhm.
something comes up, I'll ping you on Slack. But
Okay,
right
that's great.
now, yeah,
I
right now
know
I
one
think.
thing that we're trying to do, like I said, is we're trying to merge the tokens. So I don't know
Mhm.
if that's going to present any new problem apart from the scope confusion, but
Mhm.
I'm wondering if there's a way to fix that with changing the priority or changing the generation process. So you define like the scope type, and then it says you've created this kind of token instead of picking the token first.
Yeah, I think a good example again, referring how industry has done it is if you look at Auth0, how they generate tokens is like in the OAuth context, you have different types of clients, right? Like you have a front-facing web applications that want to, like, say you log into, I don't know, you want to try to log into ops.gitlab.net, and you can log in through username or password, or you can log in through your Gmail account. So when you log in through Gmail, it under the hood, it uses OAuth to get a token from on behalf of Gmail, and log you in that way. So that's one client context, and one other client context would be like single page applications, where it's a single page application, as the name says. You don't have like, you're not logging in on behalf of Google or something like that. So that's a totally different context. So depending on the context, like the first question they would ask you uh, is the client here like a single page application? If yes, then they would only enforce this specific grant type called, I think it's Pixie for single page applications. So the whole flow of how they generate the token and what kind of token it is depends on the client, or the context in which the token is being used. And if it's totally a backend OAuth client, then they would use like a different grant. I think it's called client credentials grant. And the process to generate and refresh tokens is totally different based on the context. So maybe we could use something like that on the high level, like what is the use case here, and maybe based on that we can then change how we generate tokens and how we manage them accordingly. So if you can log into like Auth0, you'll get to see like what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, cool. That works good.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been really helpful. And I'm going to use this research to kind of make a bunch of changes. And I'll come back with a new prototype to talk to the
Mhm.
rest of the team and show what the changes we've discussed so far.
Cool. Sounds good.
All right. Well, take it easy. Thanks again.
Yeah, you too. Yeah. Take care
Bye-bye.
and take some rest. Yeah. Bye.
Yeah, thanks.